Welcome to Miami. We're here again. MJT Football. I'm joined with the J and the T and the MJT to talk about the Miami Dolphins record-breaking offense, y'all. And I had to get you guys on for this conversation because you're both old. They're comparing this offense to the greatest show on turf, and like I said, they've broken the record. They have officially gained the most amount of yards ever by an NFL team in the first 5 weeks. I'm going to go over some of these stats, but the big one, we'll start with this one first. Total offense in 5 games, 2,568 total yards. We're talking about more than 500 yards on average per game, and they're on track to have like 8,500 yards total this season, which we've never seen a team ever do anything like this. This pace is crazy, but Joe, what's your reaction to actually hearing the numbers that are coming out of Miami this year? I mean, Mike McDaniel is an effing genius with all of this speed that he's got in this offense.
Yeah, when I saw it this morning, I saw a little graphic that said, here's the #1 team in NFL history, and I was like, wow, they're better than the greatest show on turf. Like, I was like, ooh, okay, maybe I need to look into Miami a little bit more because we know what they can do, but to have the #1 passing offense and the #1 rushing offense, and they're not just doing it with like one wide receiver. They got 2 badass wide receivers. They're not doing it with 1 running back. They're doing it with 2, and maybe when Jeff Wilson comes back, 3, or he is back, but 3 running backs, right? So they have a lot of weapons. And the whole time we've been talking about how shitty that offensive line is. I guess you don't need an offensive line to have a top offense, a top record-breaking offense in this league. You just have to have a great play designer. I
mean, it's like insane, actually, how crazy this is. They're the first best passing offense with 1,639 yards, 327 pass yards per game. And they're first in rushing total as well. 929 yards rushing as a team. They're averaging 185 rushing yards per game, Tony.
So the similarity that I see is you're giving somebody who's kind of ahead of the curve offensively, right? A bunch like a track team. And you're letting him go. And that's what happened. Like Mike Martz burst onto the scene and he was given Torrey Holt and Azakim and Isaac Bruce and then a dynamic running back like Marshall Faulk. And then we didn't know anything about Kurt Warner. Like I grew up a Packers fan and still was just like, wait, this guy played for the Packers? Like, no, he didn't. But that was like the thing that they had there. Like he was in camp with them. Speed is one thing in the NFL, and I think fans are always like, this guy was 4.2, like whatever, you gotta have, but you have to have speed combined with like ingenuity, like the brain power to be able to figure out how to make that speed most effective and dynamic and not have those people losing on press coverage at the line of scrimmage or making sure that they can hit acceleration points in the field where it's crushing. And that's what's so much fun. I'm not a Dolphins fan, but every week it's the first game that I rewatch because I'm like, oh, what did he do this week? Like it's so compelling to watch. And the #1 thing about this offense that's really got to be exciting for Dolphins fans is the sacks are down, like Joe said, with no offensive line. Like I'm looking out there and I'm like, wait, Teron Armstead isn't playing in this game and they're still not getting pressure. Like that was the most frustrating thing in week 1 as Charger fans. We were like, sack total is going to be like 8 at the end of this game. And they barely even touched Tua. So like, if they can keep him upright, there's no reason to think that it's going to slow down. Now, 8,000 yards is a little insane, but like, I'm looking at this and I go, oh yeah, I do see a lot of similarities. It's somebody who's really smart and really obsessed with like, how can I maximize these players' abilities? Or even to the point where it's like, oh, Robbie Chosen, you're going to play a dozen snaps a game and we're going to find ways to put you in a spot where you can still be dynamic. And that's amazing to me. Like, that's so much fun. I love it.
Yeah, Mike McDaniel, he's a creative motherfucker. I'll tell you that much. Go ahead, Joe.
They just brought in Chase Claypool, who is underperforming for the Bears. You don't think Mike McDaniel's going to find a way to get him involved? Like that's another weapon, another big weapon that they can add into it if they can get him to buy into what's going on. I mean, he got like Tony just said, he got chosen Robbie Anderson, whatever you want to call him, to buy in. And I thought Robbie Anderson was a non-factor, but he got him to buy into this offense. Mike McDaniels is just so smart of what he's doing and going and building his offense on the skill of the player and around those guys. It's amazing to watch.
Yeah, and excuse me, but yeah, the creativity, it just speaks wonders. And you're damn right, he is going to find a way to use Chase Claypool. I've seen some stuff that they're already talking about Chase Claypool running some routes at a tight end position, which I don't know how that's going to go, but as long as he's running routes, I feel like it can't go bad. I mean, he'd be one of the faster tight ends in the league at that point out of that spot, but they are going to get creative. They're going to find a way to use Claypool's size and ability to go up and get jump balls, which is maybe the only thing that they lack, even though I feel like Tyreek Hill is like really good at going up and getting footballs for his size and his skill set. But it's a lot of just creativity, like these motions. And like you're saying, Tony, he knows how to maximize the speed. He's learned that he can use Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle to get like a running head start with these motions. And they're almost impossible to guard when they're screaming down the field at full speed when they're only 3 yards down the field now, instead of having to build up that speed to get down the field. And then what he's doing in the rushing game is the same thing he did with Raheem Mostert, but Raheem Mostert has been able to stay healthy. And unfortunately, I say that Devon Achane got hurt and he's going to miss a few weeks, but the way he's been using Raheem Mostert and find success with Raheem Mostert on these zones where it's kind of like, Raheem, just keep the play flowing. And then once you see your hole, hit that shit as hard as you can. And just keep the play flowing, keep the play moving. You see your hole, hit it. And now when you take it from Raheem Mostert, who's a very fast 4.3 running back with size, to a guy that can run a 4.2, to a guy that's as fast as Tyreek Hill, it's next level when he hits that hole and he's seeing daylight. I mean, there was a play last week in that game against the Giants where Achane just made Xavier McKinney look like he was a kid with how fast he ran right past him. And Xavier McKinney is one of the more athletic, better safeties in the entire league.
So look at what they did in week 1 on turf at SoFi. If this team's in the Super Bowl, I would give them the edge because of the speed over 49ers or Eagles playing on a surface like that, where they really have a chance to be creative, catch them off guard in a game that's slower, right? The Super Bowl has those. And I know we're getting way far out there. Like they have to go through the AFC and they have to find a way to dethrone the Chiefs and hopefully would have to find a way to get through the incredible Chargers defense that's slowly ramping up throughout the season. But having them be in that game where it's slower and you get more breaks and more rests and you're not burnt out, that would be a really interesting, surface to watch them play a Super Bowl on.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about the AFC East picture here in a minute. I just want to read a few more of these stats off that I have written down really quick. Just get your guys' reactions, how crazy this is, and everyone listen in the comments what you think. Tua, right now, leading the league in passing yards with 1,614 passing yards. And he's tied for second in passing touchdowns with 11 touchdowns. He has 5 interceptions thrown. His passer rating right now is 111.9 with a 71% completion percentage. Tyreek Hill is leading the league in receiving yards at 651 yards. He has 5 touchdowns receiving, which also leads the NFL. Devon Achane is 37th in carries. Keep that in mind. He's not even in the top 32 in carries and in attempts and in chances to run the football this year. He's second in the league in rushing, only to Christian McCaffrey with 7 touchdowns rushing, or I think 7 total touchdowns, which puts him second in the league amongst running backs for total touchdowns as well. And then you go to Raheem Mostert, who's first in the league in touchdowns by a running back with 8. So they're leading the league in almost every single category across the board as individuals and as a team.
All those stats are impressive, Mike, and they're good. But there's one stat that I'm very impressed with, and this is what a lot of teams thrive to get good at. It's red zone offense. 70% of the time 76% of the time they make it to the red zone, they score a touchdown. And that's because of all the weapons you have down there. They're not one-dimensional when they get down there. So many things that they can do. And we're forgetting that if Tua needs to, Tua can run a little bit, right? If he needed to, but he hasn't had to do it this year. So that stat stands out to me a lot. But there is one thing that holds this team down, and we could talk about how great this offense is all we want, but when you got a shitty defense like that,
so yeah, we talk a lot.
Go ahead, Tony. Go ahead.
We talk a lot as football fans about like, what's your identity, right? Do you run the ball? Are you a deep passing team or whatever? Their identity is creativity. Like, and that's the thing that is so hard to defend, because every week you're seeing new wrinkles on things that you thought you had prepped for, and then you can't prep for it all of a sudden. And we'll get to that, the AFC East conversation in a second. But before that, here's a stat that we're not talking about. Braxton Berrios at 28 years old, 159 yards receiving already on his 18 targets, 15 catches, going to set a record high this year as like wide receiver 8 or whatever he is in that offense. Braxton Berrios. There we go.
Chase Claypool's next. We're telling you guys, he's gonna be the next guy to start having a career year. But yeah, we're talking about the comparisons to the greatest show on turf. I look at like the sport of basketball, and when you're saying the identity is their creativity, I get reminded of like the Golden State Warriors pick and roll game when I watch the Miami offense. Like, it's just so creative and ingenuitive, and it just new stuff that we haven't seen before, or at least in a long time in the NFL. But let's talk about that defense, Joe.
Hold on, I have a question for Tony real quick. Tony, Mike was still like in his dad's nutsack when it happened, but we were alive for the greatest greatest show on turf. I remember a little bit because I was in high school, but I wasn't following football as much. I was watching football, but not like in detail. Now, do you think this Miami, like there's so much speed on this Miami team? This has to be faster than that team, right? There has to be, like watching A-Chain, he hit 22 miles per hour on one of the runs the other day. And Tyreek Hill, we already know he does that all the time. This has to be the fastest team in NFL history, right, on offense?
Yeah, I would think so. And I think the part that really separates it is the speed from the backfield with A-Chain and Mostert, right? Because Marshall Faulk was more dynamic than these running backs in the passing game. And I think that was the element that separated the Rams teams was Marshall Faulk's ability to come out and be a dynamic pass catcher. And A-Chain and Mostert can catch. But the problem with the run game and the success with the run game, and the reason that I have Tyreek Hill in my MVP conversation that's creating so much is the motions that they put him on. You can literally see on plays where the defenses are panicking, like Tyreek's in motion. Who has him? We can't let him. Oh shit, we're running a counter back the other way. And now all of a sudden it's ginormous holes because the defense is so worried about the threat of Tyreek Hill just crossing, just dawdling along. They're following this guy and not realizing A-Chain's coming back across the other way, a guard's pulling, smashing, and now all of a sudden this guy's at the second level and just has one person to make miss. It's really incredible. So yes, the Dolphins team is the fastest compilation of speed that I've ever seen put together. Like, I have to believe that your boy, Al Davis, is up there going, this is what I wanted, just pacing back and forth in his tracksuit. Like, this is what I was trying to build all those years. That a boy, Mikey.
Bring back Darius Hayward-Bay. Get him in here.
I have a question for Tony also. Tony, I know Joe was in his dad's nutsack back when this happened, but he was almost born. He was almost there. But who's faster, the Miami Dolphins weapons or the Velociraptors? Like the real-life Velociraptor?
I get that we're taking shots at me for being the old guy here on this, but can I put a moratorium on nutsack talk for the rest of the show?
Okay. No more nutsack.
No promises. Talk. No promises.
But speaking of being in the sack, the one thing that can hold this Miami team back is the defense. And let's talk about the outlook on the division. It's starting to look like a two-team race. I mean, like we're saying, we said in a different video, I believe. We're talking about the Jets potentially trading for a quarterback. Maybe they can get back into it, but right now it's looking like it's Bills versus Dolphins. And the one thing that held Miami back against the Bills is they got torched on the defensive side of the ball. Right now, they're 22nd ranked in yards per game, 25th in pass. 19th versus the pass, 16th versus the run. It's 25th in points against, which means they've allowed like the 7th most points in the league right now. So the defense has been like below average to bad at times, and the offense has kind of just covered it up. We've missed it. Obviously, the Chargers game was high scoring. The Bills game was very high scoring. Are you worried down the stretch of the season that Miami's not going to be able to pull out winning this division and competing in the playoffs because of this defense, Tony?
No, I'm not. I think that the defense will progressively get better, right? I don't think it'll be amazing, but Vic Fangio has proven that his defense will be fine. And the biggest part is that they're going to get back Jalen Ramsey. Now, he's not the same Jalen Ramsey that we were used to seeing when he was dominant with the Jags or early on with the Rams, but getting that piece back to your defense is going to allow you to be a little bit more dynamic in that way. I think one of the other keys is keeping Jalen Phillips healthy, and then either Emmanuel Akpa or Bradley Chubb, right? The other DN there, they've got to step up and do something. So, like, I think that Christian Wilkins is still there, is a real nice player. Like, the defense will come along, and they won't catch up to the offense, but they'll be good enough.
I'm with you on the Jalen Ramsey take, because Jalen Ramsey plays a vital role in this defense that we've seen in previous years, played by phenomenal defensive backs in the past. Vic Fangio's defense, Jalen Ramsey's played this in the same style defense with Brendan Staley a couple years ago, and they had #1 defense. It's called the new position that they're calling it. It's called the star position, and that's kind of what Jalen Ramsey does in this defense. That's probably what the idea is from Fangio for Jalen Ramsey in this defense. You need a corner that's big enough and good enough at tackling to come inside the box. You need a corner that's athletic enough and fast enough to guard wide receivers up the slot. And of course, he's going to play outside a ton on teams' best receivers. But that what Tony's saying about the defense being more dynamic with Jalen Ramsey and how much he can transform the defense and improve the defense, it's that role that this defense kind of seeks. It's that star role. It's not a safety. It's not a DB. It's not a linebacker. It's kind of just like a superstar player that you let loose to make your defense super unpredictable. You never know where he's going to line up on any given play. The Chargers do it with Derwin James, not as much this year, but last year especially. Joe probably remembers Derwin James just coming up to the line of scrimmage and then dropping back into coverage and then going out and playing man coverage on receivers. Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, tight ends. And that is what will take the defense not to, like you're saying, an elite level, but from these 20 ranks into closer to average, and on certain games perform at a high level. But Joe, are you worried about this Miami defense kind of being the Achilles heel down the stretch of the season? Who are you looking at as the favorite right now in your mind in this division?
Well, I'm not trying to get too worried about it because, like I said, I do trust Vic Fangio a little bit. But when your offense is on pace to be one of the best offenses, if not the best offense in league history, but your team is averaging 36, your offense is averaging 36 points a game, but you're averaging giving up 27 points a game, that has to be a question mark. So I'm with Tony, and I'm waiting for Jalen Ramsey to get back to see if it does make a difference. But it's just, you can't be in the shootouts. They were in a shootout in multiple games, and the one team that has been your killer is the top of your division, and that's the Buffalo Bills. And you already gave up 48 points to them, and they made it look easy on it. Like they were like, oh yeah, we can stop them. And people are questioning, and I say it's bullshit. I think it's wrong because they said in that Patriots game that Bill Belichick gave people the way to beat the Dolphins. Well, it didn't work. I mean, and you have to have the personnel to do it too. And I don't know if it's the Buffalo Bills being good and better than the Dolphins, or more of a mindset, because sometimes it happens. Sometimes teams have that mindset where they're like, and they throw that stat out there, like they'll put it on the board. You've lost to the Buffalo Bills 13 times in a row. It won't be 14. And then you go into that game thinking, damn, we've lost to this team 13 times in a row. And you can't just get that out of your head. And then a little mistake happens. You go, here it goes. We're going to lose again. And another mistake happens. And you just snowball that into a big mistake and you lose that game. So, yes, Buffalo Bills are the team out there, but you just saw what Buffalo did with Jacksonville, and they lost a game that they should have won. So Buffalo is beatable, and I think Miami bringing Buffalo down to Miami, because look, Buffalo's going to lose a couple more games. Miami's going to continue to run. If Miami can somehow end up with a better record, and then they have to bring the Buffalo Bills down to Miami, it's win all day for Miami.
Yeah, I'm willing to take the L, Miami fans, and I'm going to say it right now. Jalen Ramsey comes back and is healthy, and the rest of the team stays healthy. Tua gets the turnovers under control because he is on track to have like 35 turnovers this season or some crazy number because he's fumbled 10 times already. But you get those two things under control, everyone stays healthy, and they don't become a turnover machine in some of these closer games. I think right now, even with me taking the Bills a few weeks ago to beat them in Buffalo, I think I would take Miami to win this division down the stretch. But Tony, what do you think?
So the Bills situation is brutal. When you lose somebody like Matt Milano, it's a killer. And I do think that Belichick had a little bit of a game plan that worked. You know, like the Dolphins need a few guys to stay healthy, Christian Wilkins and Jalen Phillips, because they are going to need that pass rush to help them out, especially if the team is putting up points. They're going to need those two guys because I don't think Jalen Phillips played in the game against the Bills. And the game with the Dolphins and Bills was actually kind of close-ish for a part, and then the Bills pulled away late. So I think that they easily can play with them. If that matchup 3 ends up being in South Beach, like, you know, in an AFC championship or second round type of a thing, I think the Dolphins can easily win that game. I hear what Joe's saying about like when you're it's like a mental thing, like when you're getting punked. And this is part of the reason I don't love the stats conversation, like the analytics people that drive everything. Like home road splits don't really mean anything. You got to look. Sometimes the human element of things, you can't factor that in. And when you are just getting beat up by a team that might not necessarily be better than you, it is kind of a thing, a personal thing you have to work through as a team. You have to be like, this shit stops right now. Like Sean McVay does not do well against Kyle Shanahan. He won the game that mattered, and now he's a Super Bowl champion because of it. Like that is a lopsided thing. He was able to get over it when it mattered the most in an NFC championship game.
And in the NFL, it's going to come down to that. I mean, this league is not easy to win in, let alone win the division, let alone win through the playoffs, and let alone win the Super Bowl. Once you get there, you got a tall mountain still to climb, even if you make it there. So we'll see what happens with Miami. Record-breaking offense. We know that is potentially happening.
The Bills' schedule is brutal, too. If you look that up, like they got a lot of tough games to play without Tre'Davious White and Matt Milano.
Yeah, they definitely should be dropping random games right now.
I have a new Super Bowl that I want to see. I want to see the 49ers go undefeated and play the Miami Dolphins in the Super Bowl to see if they can break the record against the only team that ever went undefeated.
That's great.
Mercury Morris is crying because you said that right now.
You saying both teams undefeated, Joe?
No. Miami's not going to go undefeated. They have already lost.
Oh, yeah, they already have a loss. I'm tripping.
But Miami has gone undefeated. They're the only team in NFL history to be undefeated. And for another team to face them in the Super Bowl for a chance. So Miami will have to defend their record in the Super Bowl against a team that's undefeated.
Joe,
you should be the script writer. You should be the script writer in this.
I think Joe would have to cancel the internet if the 49ers go undefeated and win the Super Bowl.
That's true.
Could you imagine that's a topic for another time, but yeah, I'm not want to get on Niner fans right now.
Niner fans, don't worry. Hold on. I'm sure Joe is cooking up something for you guys. Appreciate you for tuning into this one. Let us know your thoughts on the Miami Dolphins start to the season and their outlook on the rest of the season going forward in the comment section. Help us out by liking the video. It helps us out a ton in the algorithm and getting this out to more NFL fans. Also, you can just share this thing with Miami and NFL fans that will be interested in the podcast. We'll see you guys on the next upload or live stream. Did I say to subscribe? We're just 3 friends talking football. Always looking for a 4th. Please subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications for the future. Joe, Tony, anything else?
No.
Adios, mother truckers.